Welcome to the Four Evansville Podcast. You're listening because you care about Evansville. You see what's beautiful about our city, but you also see real challenges, and you want to be part of the solution. But where do you start, and how do you make a lasting impact? That's where Four Evansville comes in. Through storytelling, films, podcast episodes, and gatherings, we drive meaningful conversation about our city's needs and opportunities. We connect people, organizations, and the local church together, creating a community where collaboration leads to real change. And we believe that you are uniquely positioned to make a difference. So if you're ready to move from feeling overwhelmed and disconnected to feeling empowered within a collaborative community, you're in the right place. Don't just live in Evansville, be for Evansville.
Hello, welcome back to the Four Evansville Podcast. My name is Adrienne. I'm on the Four Evansville staff, and I am here today with Amy Mangold, the President and CEO of United Way, and Austin Maxheimer, the Love Your Neighborhood Director at Community One. So we're continuing our Talent EVV annual report, kind of mini-series that we're doing. And so this week we are covering upward mobility. And this is kind of the importance of involving neighborhoods in the growth and just flourishing of Evansville. And we've just kind of seen over the last, I feel like maybe the last couple of years, that this has been really important to Evansville. So welcome. Thank you. I'm glad to kind of
thanks for having us.
Pick your brains today on this subject because I feel like that's probably not a topic or something that people would kind of say is important for, you'd think of population growth or better jobs and economy kind of things, but never like on a neighborhood level.
Oh, but even as a region, as we talk about the Talent EVV report, this used to be the poverty reduction kind of work stream or element of Talent EVV.
Okay.
And we even changed the language because that was such a negative term. And even just changing the language for upward mobility, because it's all about helping people understand how to thrive. And when all of us get to that level of thriving, which neighborhood revitalization is key to doing that.
Yeah, and we also hear like talent attraction from other cities and talent retention of our talent here. I would say even with Talent EVV, talent development, and some of the places in which we know there's a lot of latent talent that needs discovered and activated is in our core neighborhoods where people that are experiencing poverty just need some of those barriers help removed by our larger community in order to tap in to the amazing resource that we have in our neighbors in these neighborhoods. So it fits really well together.
Yeah. And when I'm thinking about even larger cities, some of them are very defined by their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And they each have a different culture and, restaurants and things that they bring to the city as a whole. So let's just jump in. We're talking about this already, but why is the upward mobility essential to the long-term kind of social and economic success of Evansville?
Well, I think it's, again, having that vision of a community where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And that means every neighborhood, and thriving means something different to every person. So it's really being able to respect what a neighborhood, kind of how a neighborhood sees itself and the aspirations for itself and the greater region, and how we can make sure that when we think about Evansville being a place where people want to live, work, and play, quality of place is part of that, and making sure everyone has the opportunity to thrive is a really big piece of that.
Yeah. And I brought along a little case statement that my friend Dr. Burnett at USI had, and when you think about the economic viability of our region, so if you just take 25 kids and flip them for where their normal outcome would be living in poverty to then becoming productive citizens as far as being out of poverty from an economic development standpoint, that is $357,633 every year that we would take if we're just flipping 25 kids. So if you think about the work that we're doing in Promise or in the Love Your Neighborhood initiatives, taking neighbors that are experiencing poverty and flipping them to having just living wage jobs, just area median income. So we're not even talking about activating, like the absolute potential of neighbors. Then when you talk about the sustainability of our region, that is that's 25 kids. Now imagine we get to 15,000 kids in our region that we're looking for that are experiencing poverty right now. If we could somehow create the region and city where every kid wins, then we would be a flourishing community, and it's there. It's possible.
He's right. It is an economic driver, right? So whenever and part of that piece, the neighborhood piece, we talk a lot about the social capital piece of thriving and flourishing and being able to get to the next level. Do people have the social capital, the networks that either keep them stable or help them grow? And being part of a neighborhood revitalization, or I love the term, love your neighbor, especially right now, it's just so key, would be just an amazing thing for us to be able to lift up for our whole region.
Yeah. So let's take those 25 kids, or let's take a neighborhood. What does that look like? That's your program, basically, Love Your Neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, let's say, first of all, that there's different understandings to community development. But at Community One, we coined the phrase Love Your Neighborhood as just a play on a mashup between what's called assets-based community development and what we would say is Jesus' ministry with marginalized neighbors. And so we are wedding those two ideas and concepts together with Love Your Neighborhood. And that's the approach that we take that stays centered on residents. So an assets-based community development approach would say that the greatest asset in any neighborhood are the neighbors themselves. And so we deeply believe in that. And so that's what a Love Your Neighborhood basically is. And it's this most fundamental, foundational idea is that we're going to meet neighbors and we're going to activate them into the change process. We believe that transformed neighbors transform neighborhoods, and that flourishing neighbors can produce flourishing neighborhoods. And so that's the core simple idea, is that we're just going to commit to a long-term relationship with neighbors through a neighborhood. And then we're going to activate them in the change process and just do that over long periods of time. And so there's no, I don't think it's any magic. People have been talking about this for a long time, but it has gained some momentum in our region precisely because we've been able to activate 5 Love Your Neighbor initiatives in our region. So we've almost got a proof of concept where we're seeing residents be the change agents. And we've had some initial early successes in that. And I would say it's still kind of a hypothesis or a early intervention, but there is some good early successes in it.
Could you walk us through a story so our listeners can kind of have an idea of when this is activated in a neighborhood? What exactly does that mean?
Well, okay, let's see. So let's do this. So way back in 2017, when we were kicking off the TP Park initiative, I was just there as a volunteer. So I wasn't even on staff yet. I wasn't the Love Your Neighborhood director. We weren't overseeing 5 Love Your Neighborhood initiatives in partnership with neighborhood-based organizations. We didn't have 5 resident-voiced plans. I was just there as an interested person who loves people and loves neighborhood work. And I was sitting at a table with someone who I just met. Her name was Lisa. And at that time, she had never connected anyone. So you were talking about the social capital and connection with people. So she had lived in the neighborhood for a long time, but she didn't know any of her neighbors. She wasn't participating in any change process, but she had gotten the invitation through the mail. So she was excited to come let her voice be heard. And so at that meeting, she was sharing about how she had a vision for helping with housing and how she wanted to help with youth kids. And that voice, that heart that she gave rise to in that community listening session, those data points ended up going into a plan, and then she was invited to participate as a leader in the plan. And I could go for a very long time about this story, but just last year in TP Park, Habitat helped bring that vision to life of affordable housing in the neighborhood by investing in 32 units just in the span of about 12 to 18 months. They were able to do that focused investment. And then we have 55 promised kids through the Potter's Wheel, promising our neighborhood kids to walk cradle to career with them. And so giving your voice vision, or giving your vision to voice, and then being actually participating in the change process. So Lisa gave an amazing TED Talk about being involved in that change process, TEDx Evansville Talk, which you can listen to online. But so it's giving your voice, but then also participating, because that's where the beauty and the transformation happens.
Well, and I love the piece of that. We've been going through Harwood in the Public Innovators Lab, and Harwood talks a lot about shared community aspirations. And that's what's so neat about this, is you're getting people together aspiring and talking about what they aspire for their neighborhood, for their community, and how then whenever you can find these shared aspirations, it's very positive. It begins to be fuel for these little small actions, and one small action catalyzes the next one. And they have shared ownership because they've had a voice, and it's part of what they're looking to do and what they're looking to affect in their own neighborhood. So I love that, and it is proven. These methods are proven elsewhere, that if you can just start this little expansion or this little ripple effect that begins in the neighborhoods with people that just want to help themselves and help the others around them, it can be very powerful.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of powerful, I've got some numbers here.
Ooh.
It says this program, the Love in Your Neighborhood program success, includes significant milestones like 119,000 invested directly into resident dreams.
Yeah.
What you were talking about is those people have these dreams for the neighborhood. So, and 1,300 neighbors engaged. So what does this tell us about the program's impact?
Yeah, well, we were trying to figure out a way to quantify engagement. So when we're reading the assets-based community development literature, it says this is a great idea in theory, but in practice it's very hard. And there's reasons for that we could get into, but what we found is that just simply if we were going to track and quantify anything, we wanted to put that investment into resident engagement. And so we just came up with a simple way of tracking that. Have we met residents? Have we aligned them to the plan? Have we connected them to the work? And then are they turning around and leading their neighbors in the process? And so when we talk about 1,300 neighbors participating, those are actual names of real people in 5 different neighborhoods in our region that have went through that process, that have engaged at least on that level. And we're tracking that because we want to show the efficacy of the work, that yes, we can develop communities from the outside in, or we can do it from the inside out. And as a society, we kind of ran the experiment of making change from the outside in, and just didn't really have much of effect or long-term impact. But the theory being, if the residents themselves with real names and real people like Lisa, if they can participate in the change process, and they'll have ownership, as Amy said, not only have ownership of the process, but they can actually design the community that they want to be a part of. And if they have design input and ownership of it, then hopefully they will be the change agents, and it won't be experiences change done to them, but they'll be the ones doing it. So we'll see, though. I mean, we're still early in a lot of these. Like Glenwood, we just finished the year of listening. So, but we're very hopeful.
So what's the year of listening?
Yeah, we just want to listen first. So when you listen to a neighbor, you immediately confer value to them, and you also do the exact opposite of what neighbors typically experience in high poverty neighborhoods. Is that people that have the solution for their lives tell them what they need to do to change, and it mostly is done well, right? Like most people are genuinely wanting to help their neighbor and their community. But it's believing that the neighbors themselves have all the answers for them lives if we simply remove barriers or access them. And so just by virtue of listening instead of telling, we believe that begins the whole change of the narrative, is that you're not a person that needs something. You're a neighbor to be activated. And so we do that through 2 things: a SWOT analysis, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the neighborhood, and then what we call influencer interviews. They're just appreciative inquiry questions. It's meant to draw out the good parts of what it is part of this community, because oftentimes people focus on the bad part. And so that's what the first year that kicks off any Love Your Neighborhood initiative is we're just going to spend a year meeting neighbors and listening to them. And that's it. That's the entire way we kick off any Love Your Neighborhood initiative.
Hey, this is Pat. I remember feeling disillusioned about what I perceived to be a lack of collaboration among Christians in Evansville. 150 churches, 150 ministries type of thing. Then I discovered Four Evansville, an organization that's devoted to bringing together Christians to address the city's most pressing issues, like kids growing up in poverty. And that's why I joined the Four Evansville Collective, to be around more people like me who love Evansville. So be for Evansville and be part of the collective. You can learn more at fourevansville.org/collective.
So what's United Way's involvement in, are they involved with the Love Your Neighborhood initiative, or just in upward mobility in general?
Well, United Way got involved whenever it was Talent 2025, so part of the original core team. And back then it was the poverty reduction work stream. And Talent 2025 has gone through such an evolution since it began. And so that has evolved into a more positive conversation about upward mobility, and then also evolved into bringing more partners into the work and really trying to uplift and be a megaphone to boots on the ground that are already doing this amazing work. So as Austin mentioned, it's not this top-down approach where one organization is going to come in and they're going to say, hey, we're going to meet this goal and we're trying to push all of these initiatives and we know how to do this. It really has become more of what are the true collective impacts? Where can we get to these collaborative tables? How can we lift up organizations that are doing this amazing work, like Love Your Neighbor and the Love Your Neighborhood and Love Your Neighbor initiative, and some of the other great collaborative tables that are taking place right now. So it's really starting to now lift up those voices to find those proven and promising practices to try and scale those up. United Way actually, as part of all of this evolution, then evolved their funding model based on that as well. We did our own Harwood Conversations several years ago. Harwood Conversations being really very similar, going out into the community, asking what the aspirations are and the challenges, and then trying to listen to that and refocus ourselves, going from an kind of a garden hose kind of spray everything type of model to a really focused stream model of investing in organizations that are making the most impact. And that's when we changed our focus to be on lifting up those who are experiencing poverty, or maybe they're working, but yet they're struggling. They're just not making that living wage, and helping reduce the barriers around those. So trying to be more in the work with the boots on the ground organizations that are doing these amazing things and helping strategize with those as well.
Yeah, I wanted to focus in on the collaborative part that you're talking about, that is important for not just one organization, but it's really important for a bunch of organizations to work together. Austin, do you have other organizations that work with and partner with the Love Your Neighborhood?
Yeah. So, it seems like a limitless or endless opportunity for collaboration and genuine collaboration. But as something Amy said, this idea of focused impact, transformation, so in 2016, when the Promise Zone designation came, the way they drew the boundaries was try to get the most, because you had to draw what was a contiguous line around a geographical zone for Promise Zone designation. And they tried to get as much of our city's poverty into that line so that they could receive the benefits of being in the Promise Zone designation, as many of our neighbors as possible. And at that time, they drew that around 13 core neighborhoods in our city, and that captured 80% of our city's poverty, of our neighbors living below the poverty line. So thinking about that, if we brought 13 neighborhood revitalization initiatives to our community, theoretically, we could be impacting or beginning to see an uplift of the environment of that neighbors live in, to actually maybe eradicate poverty. I like to dream big, and but it takes focused investment. We can't continue to spread out our investment in a way that maybe waste is too strong of a word, but where our social response, like social capital, our philanthropic investment in our community, it needs to be invested in a way that's bringing actual transformation to these communities. And so I just want to commend United Way. Like, that's a really important move. And if we could rally around that vision as a wider community, if we could really come together and bring that focused impact in a holistic way, then that would be, I think, achievable for our community to make a genuine dent in these numbers, because neighborhood revitalization is not a program. It's not a programmatic response. It's a people-based response, and the people in the neighborhoods need a holistic response. When you think about like upward mobility and collaboration, like one of our community's great programs that we need to collaborate is the GAIN initiative out of the Evansville Christian Life Center that helps walk with a neighbor to set their own goals for financial independence. Well, we need that program, but if you continue to spread that across all the neighbors in our region, well, then the return on that investment becomes less. But if you can change 20, 30, 40 financial realities of upward mobility of neighbors that live in a concentrated area, and they're all also talking to one another, like social capital between neighbors themselves that are escaping poverty, not being told how to do that by people that aren't experiencing that and trying to navigate these systems, well, then all of a sudden it's like, man, we've really got something, a potential for something. So yeah, the collaboration goes everywhere from Urban Seas. I mentioned habitat housing investment. We've got working out of our clubhouse in TP Park that's helping connect neighbors. They came out of their office and came to our neighborhood so that they could be closer in proximity to neighbors. And the list could just go on and on. I didn't mean to leave any of our collaborative partners out, but it's endless.
And I think that's what's been so exciting about this work for us, as we're seeing Evansville. Sometimes you don't think it's collaborative, but the more that we talk with people, and the more that we talk with people outside of our region, they're like, oh my gosh, you guys are amazingly collaborative. So I think we really need to celebrate that. And we need to celebrate all the partners that are really coming together and doing this work together. And again, United Way, we've changed our model. We've revised our mission, and our mission really is trying to understand and address these community needs through investments and through really lifting up the partners that are, again, working in this area. We are not the experts in this area. We're working through the experts in this area and trying to make all of that possible. And so all of these collaborative tables, whether it be a mental health collaborative that really also feeds into a poverty initiative because they often go hand in hand, or the Echo Collaborative, or many of these other tables that are just working across lines and trying to really find the synergies to really serve a lot of people and to really lift them up, to your point.
Yeah. So what are you guys excited about for the future? What's next?
Well, I'm excited. Well, I get to cheat a little bit. I like a life hack, because I was telling Amy as we were just getting to know each other more, I've been doing neighborhood work for 12 years, but the first 5 or 6 was just as a volunteer in my local church. So I get vocationally now. I did that for fun. I told her, I did neighborhood work for fun in my spare time as a volunteer before this. So now I get to do it full time. So I genuinely am excited about every single day that I get to wake up and hang out with neighbors. And so every single day is an opportunity to meet a new neighbor who then might be the next world changer. It might be the next person who's going to change Evansville. It might be the new Stephanie Terry, first woman, that might break new ground, and that might change everything, And so it's like the thought that we could come into a neighborhood and clear away some of the barriers that some of the environmental lived reality of some of these neighbors, clear away some of those to where they could have a pathway to flourishing, that then they could turn around and be the next person who brings some sort of tech innovation, or, that person might be in TP Park today. And they might have a future in that because of the work we do. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the idea that restored neighbors bring restoration into the world. And because I know that's my own story. Like, once my life was transformed, I wanted to go about being in the business of bringing transformation into the world. And so I genuinely and deeply believe that that can happen. But maybe more practically, I'm excited the fact that we have 5 Love Your Neighbor initiatives going, and we have 4 neighborhoods that are on the cusp that are ready. They're just a few like final puzzle pieces need to fall into place to activate these neighborhoods. And so I am excited about the expansion of this vision, not of community one's work or Love Your Neighborhood as a thing, but just as a way that more neighbors are being loved, more neighbors are being restored, more neighbors are being activated into the change process to see their dreams and hopes come alive. Those are the things that I'm probably most excited about. Yeah.
And I tell you, for me, it's about kind of this uniting force that we have working together. Think about what a uniter Love Your Neighbor and Love Your Neighborhood is, and the social capital that builds, and the relationships and the connection that we seem to be losing right now, or it might be at risk. And so I think these types of things that really are aspirational, focus people on the positive and what's really possible is really exciting to me as we kind of navigate a challenging time. And then for us, I think it's very exciting because one of the ways that we really support the community and these proven and promising practices is through our investments, through our pathway grants. And this spring, we're going to be investing in social capital. We're going to be investing in social capital initiatives. So that could be initiatives that are happening in each of these neighborhoods. So very excited to see those applicants. And then also our empowering employment grants. Again, reducing those barriers for the people for individuals who are in these neighborhoods that just need some resourcing and some barrier removal to really get to that next level. And then we've got a great program called Amplify that is really working to lift up the voices of the marginalized. And those are often embedded in the neighborhoods that Austin and they are working in. And so lending voice to them and their aspirations and making sure that we're all working together to love each other and to love our region. Because, whenever we start them in these neighborhoods, our region is just going to rise as well.
Yeah.
Okay, Austin, I'm going to put you on the spot here
Okay.
because
I'll try to do better than I did on the
story.
listening one.
Oh, great. We're storytellers. We like to hear the stories. And so I asked you earlier to share, and you did. But do you have like little snippets of just like this person wanted to do this and now they are, or just like kind of these little creative ideas that people have had that they're able to do now?
Yeah, there's so many, and some of these are through these, you highlighted, we've tracked, there's been $119,000 of direct investment is just what we're calling it. Those have happened through all sorts of different ways. But one of the ways that we do that is through action projects. And so we give small little, we can't call them grants because you can't grant a grant. I found that out. You know that more than me. But the action funds that we award to neighbors, but it's specifically to see their actions come alive. So, that's all that is like, do you have an idea to help improve the quality of life in your neighborhood? Anything. And if so, then apply for that and activate it. And so a large chunk of that 119,000 has been in these action projects across 5 neighborhoods. And it's the small things from like, someone wanted a lending library or food pantry in their front yard, and then now they got money to do it, and it's there. And that's a small thing, but it's a big thing to that person who now becomes part of a knitted community. Like they in their mind, they're participating to the flourishing of their neighbors, right? So it's just small things like that, but then really big things like DeAndre Wilson, who everyone knows, we're working on getting Bedford Club finally open this week, and all credit to them with sticking with it. But there could be 10, 15, 30 food entrepreneurs cooking in TP Park. That's a big vision. That's a $1 million plus vision. So everything from like these small lending libraries to full-blown innovative business ideas, and then everything in between, like kids programming, like we said, like Lisa getting to spend time with kids, helping them go cradle to career. And there's just endless stories like that throughout all the neighborhoods.
That's so cool. I love that. So as we have our average listeners who may not be a part of volunteering, nonprofit, or just, how can people get involved in either neighborhood work or upward mobility? Like, I feel like everyone can in some capacity. So what would you tell somebody if they're like, this is something I'm really passionate about, I would like to be a part of it?
You want to go first?
Well, I think I guess I will. I mean, there's a couple of ways that you can, either through United Way. We have a Get Connected site. We have a volunteer site on our website, and many of our neighborhood partners or nonprofits will put volunteer opportunities there, and they can sign up for those. We also do our Awesome Day of Caring every year. But then I think even, there's awesome ways to get more involved, boots on the ground in the neighborhoods through your organization.
Yeah, constantly. And so we do home repairs. We do major home repairs. We do Neighbors Helping Neighbors. So anyone who has a physical financial hardship can post a project, and then volunteers from the community does. So we have all these ways at Community One that you get connected. But I want to come back to something Amy said is, we are in an interesting time socially, culturally. There's an epidemic of loneliness, anxiety, depression, isolation, plague of isolation. I remember Brene Brown's talk always stuck with me about the 3 irreducible needs of human beings is to be known, to be loved, and to be brave. And that's really what a Love Your Neighbor initiative in the end is really trying to do. Do we know our neighbors? Can we be a community that knows one another? And then can we actually experience love, sacrificial love, to where we give a part of our lives so that other people can flourish? And then can we be brave? Can we join together to do something bold and courageous in the world? Like, those irreducible needs are there in a Love Your Neighborhood initiative. Like, the opportunity for them is there. And can we create a network or a knitted community of belonging, where people don't feel isolated and left alone? And that is not only a epidemic of people experiencing poverty. That is a nationwide issue, regardless of income or socioeconomic status. And so I would say the very first step you can do is to love your neighbor. And I know that is almost like an eye roll moment, but whether you're living in 6-figure housing complexes in the suburbs, or you're living in one of the lowest income neighborhoods in Evansville, you can step out your front door with different eyes to see that you can love your neighbor and see where it goes from there.
And can I add to that? Because I'd also like to, I love that you said that, because it doesn't always have to be formalized volunteerism, right? It just, being generally a great person and loving your neighbor and loving others. And we've got a kind of movement going on right now called the We Are All Philanthropists. Yeah. Carol Havens and Kara are doing their month of random acts of kindness. And I think, again, when we start really small, it can explode into something really large. And so it doesn't, to your point, Austin, it doesn't always have to be formal. It can be just simply loving someone or doing a random act of kindness for someone you don't know or who might be in need. I think that's just a really great, easy way to start.
I'm thinking even more like, let's think more creatively for, it's not just a volunteer thing. Yeah. Like you're saying, it's more of a mind shift of how you walk out your front door and view your neighborhood. But also I'm thinking business owners, how can they get involved? Can they employ people from a neighborhood that have those dreams of wanting to be, can they offer apprenticeships or things like that? Do you have any kind of businesses that are joining in the work?
We haven't had as much success from that, although there's been interest. So the problem, gosh, we're going to get into the complexities of the holistic neighborhood work and the injustices of the world. So so think about this. Like, our city's infrastructure is built literally to drive around the South Side. So, wow. Which there's no reason why anyone that from the South Side doesn't live in the South Side needs to go to the South Side. You could stay on 41, the Lloyd. We built it so people could drive around it. Now, there's all sorts of reasons why we could go into that. Some of them just practical and pragmatic. Others I would call injustice. But leaving that aside for now, the difficulty in that is that we've not only built our infrastructure, we've built our social systems to work around that as well.
Yeah, finally.
For all the reasons. And so there's a difficulty in the bridge. Like when I was talking to local church leaders, who want to come and help in Love Your Neighbor initiatives, they want to come with a servant heart. They want to come with a role. But we've even built our service opportunities to be consumerist. So we build, hey, come from this time to this time,
Right.
do this role, and then you can leave and go home instead of being relational and people-centric. Even our volunteer opportunities are program-centric.
Right.
And so, like, I would talk with church leaders sometime, and I'd be like, that wanted to participate, and I'd say, hey, TP Park's got a movie night coming up. What would it look like for you just to come and bring a chair? Don't serve in the food line. Don't, be in the teardown, breakdown, setup, teardown crew. Just bring a chair. Just come hang out and watch a movie in the neighborhood where, 3 months ago we had gunshots and a youth was murdered. Now you can come and you can be a positive just presence in the neighborhood, just bringing a chair to watch a movie alongside of a neighbor to create a community of belonging. Like those sorts of, that paradigm shift for people is very, very difficult because we're breaking down decades and decades of what we meant by mobilization and volunteerism. And those things, those systems will just take a while to break down, but you can't. Like you talked about business owner. We have 5 different neighborhood initiatives going, 4 plans in hand. Every one of them, residents have a desire to see economic mobility come to their community because they've been economically depressed for decades and decades. Right. We need business minds. We need people with banking backgrounds, with startup experience to come in and help neighbors' visions come alive. So there's endless opportunity to do that. The problem is that we want to apply these programmatic responses instead of people-based responses, and when these relation-based it's really hard to commit to a neighborhood for 10 straight years, right? Like that's a difficult thing for anyone. I don't mean to communicate that it's easy. It's very, very hard, and that level of commitment is hard. But it's there, so you could connect tomorrow to any neighborhood in our region that has a planned change process going on.
Yeah, and when we talked to Tyler in our first episode, when we're setting all of this up, he was talking about when they first got started and we're creating those goals as Talent 2025, and I don't know if it was necessarily negativity, but it was just like, this is going to take a long time. We want to see change now. And I think it's kind of this consensus of all the people that we've had involved so far are just saying we've got to create these systems for the long term. And so having that long-term mindset of I may not see the change, and maybe even in my lifetime, but I can at least start building a foundation.
It is planting seeds, and it's the small win. You do small wins really build momentum, and it catalyzes other small wins, but always coming in and looking for the big overhaul that's going to happen next year or within 2 years or something like that. Whenever you're dealing with a really, really complex problem with so many different factors, it's a long-term thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just add to that we can keep doing things the way we've always done them, and we will get the same results we've always had, right? Like I always share this when we're talking about why neighborhoods and why Love Your Neighborhood specifically as an intervention, as a proposed potential intervention. The war on poverty started in the 1960s. Like we've been running this social experiment as a nation for 50, 60 plus years, and yet while global poverty has halved 3 times, America's has stayed the exact same. And so what we're working on, the things that we're doing to fight this war on poverty isn't working. So we can keep doing the very definition of insanity, or we can do like United Way did and make a bold commitment to change how we've operated and done things, not as like you're wrong or bad. It's just like we ran the experiment. It didn't work, and that's okay. It was an experiment, right? But we can't get wedded to these systems. We have to be willing to be agile, to be adjust, to change as society changes. Like we didn't have AI, or at least as it's currently expressed, in 1960, right? Like we need to be socially innovative as well. And I think, as I am a homer though, like I do believe deeply in the neighborhood work because residents are at the center of it. It's not a programmatic response. And so what will continue to be the theme uniting all this, whether it's in Lamasco or TP Park or hopefully, to a neighborhood outside of our region that we're impacting and affecting, is that it's still going to be a neighbor at the center of it. And the neighbors are going to be learning, adjusting, and adapting themselves because they're human beings and they're part of a dynamic society. And so they're going to be the change agents if we truly keep people at the center of it instead of our programs or our systems or our goods and services that we're delivering into the community. If we can shift to make that people-centric, then I think we have a chance.
That's awesome. Let's end on that. That's amazing.
It's great.
Well, you can cut this for time if you want.
Keep going.
But I was just going to say also, I had one note here that I starred that I wanted to make a point on is this idea of a community investing and actually changing things the way from what was always done. Someone who's out there might be listening with a business mind, and when you think about investment, like the return on the investment, I like to think about that as we're going to be giving into the philanthropic fabric of our community. The Evansville's region gives over $100 million every year to nonprofits. That's something to think about, right? Like something to process. So we're going to be making these social investments. What would it look like to take a small sliver of our portfolio and invest it in higher risk but higher return potential? And that's what I think about these Love Your Neighbor initiatives, like this idea of flipping a neighbor that is in poverty to productivity. Like the return on investment potential for doing in a portfolio or an area that doesn't look good on paper. It doesn't look like we should start a business here. It doesn't look like it makes sense to invest in the infrastructure in this area. Well, it doesn't look like it by the systems that we've created. But if we can invest in these communities where neighbors aren't being activated, where people are experiencing poverty, where we could see a whole population of people whose dreams and visions haven't been heard with. I love that Amplify, by the way. If we can make these risky social investments, I believe that the higher return, we'll get a much higher return as a community. Now, it does come with risk. Like it does come with a higher risk of that venture being wasted. But you know what? Why not? Let's go for it. Let's go out with a bang if we're going to go.
We're investing in people, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not going to be a miss regardless if you invest in a person.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Great. I'm glad you ended with that. Let's end with that.
Okay.
Let's do half.
No, I got one more. No, I just kidding.
I'll just keep saying let's end with that so you keep dropping these nuggets. Well, thank you guys so much for both being here and just making that investment in those neighborhoods and in people, most importantly. So thank you. Thank you for being for Evansville, and just glad you're here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.